mi huriha umrege mihun balan ekashigen bagotan ufaddafawa programe.
Good evening, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Witness with Wahid. And as I always say, this program is about a little bit of awareness, a little bit of enlightenment, a little bit of you and I talking about issues that concern us. And tonight we're going to talk about a little bit of awareness when it comes to the soul, the inside. And I have with me a guest that I do not think a lot of you would need an introduction for. And before I introduce this guest, I must tell you that on this program I might be saying a few things that perhaps you might not like. I might be asking a few questions of my guest that might sound at the best a bit, let me use the vernacular, weird. But that should not matter, because it's all done in good faith and with the purpose of gaining greater understandings for ourselves. So, my guest, and let's save time, as I said, is somebody that if you've been watching Peace TV, you would not need any introduction for, and that would be somebody that I would love to call my brother, Ustaz Abdul Green. First of all, let me tell you, sir, would you like to greet a Maldivian audience via my program?
Well, of course, I would like to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everybody, and to you, Wahid, it's a real pleasure to be on your show. I've heard good things. I'm all excited about being interviewed by you because I hear the best.
Oh, thank you for the compliment. I must ask you, at the risk of sounding rather strange again, what a name, you know, Abdul
Green.
Clean Arabic, and then Green sounds very British to me.
Yeah, but you know, people really have a problem with it in England, and it's a funny story how I changed. I never wanted to change my name when I first became Muslim. I didn't really understand, you know, what's the problem. You know, my name's Anthony, but you know, the people who I was living with at the time were a bunch of mostly Algerian and Moroccan guys, and they, you know, they took me under their wing, and you know, may Allah bless them. But they couldn't say Anthony. They had a real problem. And Sonia, we can't say Anthony. It's like they really had a problem saying Anthony. So they kept saying, please, you got to choose a Muslim name. So eventually I gave into the pressure. I succumbed to the peer pressure. And they had suggestions, Abdullah, Abdurrahman, and I thought, no, I have something a little bit different, and I chose Abdurrahim. The thing is that English people have a real problem saying Abdurrahim. They say, can I call you Abdul? I say, no, you can't call me Abdul. That means slave of. It just doesn't work. And recently one guy called me Abdul Harim. I said, no, I'm not the servant of the Harim.
Not the hero.
You know, the funny thing was that after I changed my name, and these same brothers, we were watching this video called The Message. You must have seen it, The Message, right? With Anthony Quinn. And I said, yes, that's my name. And like Anthony. They said, oh, Anthony Quinn. Why didn't you tell us so? But that's the story of how I chose Abdurrahim.
And what a good choice, I think, because then we hear you and I, all servants of the most merciful. Alhamdulillah. Isn't that very good?
It's beautiful.
In fact, the topic for tonight that I got for you is how to live the good life. You know, and in fact, I would say the good life.
Absolutely.
So what I did was, before I came here, I did a little Googling and a little research on my part.
Yep.
And I had a whole heap of notes on how to live the good life.
MashaAllah.
I'll share this with you and let me see how you react to this. You know, something I saw was carpe diem.
What?
Carpe diem, seize the day, very Latin.
Oh, yes, yeah.
You know? And so, do not dwell in the past.
Yeah,
absolutely. Do not think too much about the future. Live for the day. From an Islamic point of view, how do you react to that?
I don't know, but that is me exactly. I am a person who lives in this moment. My father was like that actually as well. I am so in the moment that if you ask me about, you know, everything from last week is like a blur. I get amazed when someone can actually say, we did this thing on the such and such date at such and such time. I go, how do you do that? How do you I just can't get my head around it, because the past is just finished for me. It's like it almost hardly exists. I literally, you know, my experience of reality is what is right now. As for the future, I have no idea what's going to happen in the future.
Would that be the kind of advice you would give to young people who have got a whole life ahead of them?
I don't know. It works for me. You know, it does have some downsides. You know, it does have some downsides because, you know, when it comes to having to deal with, you know, whether it's accounts or happenings, or people want to refer something, for me it's like, you know, yeah, that happened sometime. I do sort of remember. But I mean, it works for me in the sense that I appreciate the moment. I live my life for now, and I think what that advice is saying to how to live the good life, how to be happy, and there's so much advice around happiness, and I'm actually really interested specifically in the psychology of happiness, but that's a different subject. But on this thing that you are asking, what it means is you don't have regrets. You don't kill yourself about, oh, if only I'd done this, and if this had been like that. And this is Islamic advice. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, don't say if. Don't say if only I had done this, and if only I had done that. Because if opens the gates to shaitan. What you say is, it was the qadr of Allah, what Allah decreed happened. There's nothing I could have done to change it. And whatever's going to happen in the future, this is within Allah's qadr. What I deal with is now, my intentions, my actions, that's what I can deal with. So it's actually a very stress-free way to live your life.
And an empowering kind of thing.
Very empowering. I mean, this is the thing, is that people think the concept of qadr or qada is fatalistic. It's actually the exact opposite. Yeah, being able to hand everything over to the decree of Allah in that sense, it doesn't dissolve you of responsibility. It doesn't. You're still responsible for your actions. You still have intentions. You still make choices. But what it does mean is that you don't need to worry excessively about what you've done, and you don't need to fret excessively about what's ahead of you.
Exactly.
You know, you can go into the future with confidence.
The next thing I got was, you actually touched on this. Here's a nice one. The advice given is pursue happiness. But then, what follows after that is this.
Yes.
Pursue happiness. Do whatever makes you happy. And I got a little problem with this, because it looks like a lot of our young people these days seek something that I would classify as external stimulation to stay quote-unquote happy.
Yeah.
You need some sort of stimulus at you at all times.
Yeah. You know, when you like a subject, it's easy to get carried away, you know, with it. So I'm going to try and make this a little bit, you know, dense and concise. But I would totally disagree with that from a purely psychological perspective, from what I've studied on this subject. If you pursue happiness, you can't find it. Happiness is not something you pursue. It's the paradox of happiness that you can't look for it. It's like, I give you another example. There was an amazing film called Steep that was produced by the Sony Corporation about extreme skiing. And to cut the whole amazing, I recommend everyone to watch it, but to cut it down to the most profound moment, there is a guy who is skiing down this literally almost vertical slope. He said, one wrong move and you are dead. And he said, I never feel so alive as that moment. So this is the paradox. In order to feel supremely alive, you have to be on the edge of death. And it's the same thing with happiness. In order to feel the most profound sense of happiness, you have to abandon thinking about happiness, because happiness actually comes when you are struggling to the utmost of your ability to accomplish some worthy goal that benefits yourself and helps others, which is exactly, by the way, what is the term jihad. The proper meaning of jihad is to struggle to the utmost of your ability, whether it's spiritually, verbally, intellectually, physically. This is jihad. To take yourself to the very limits of what you can do. It shouldn't be too difficult or too easy. easy. If it's too easy, it doesn't challenge you. If it's too hard, you
don't
get
achieve it.
overwhelmed. Yeah. So always to be on. But what you said exactly is not happiness. What these youth think that happiness is watching movies, listening to music, taking drugs, having sex, the whole what I call sex, drugs and rock and roll lifestyle. It has none of the ingredients that psychologists know are the ingredients for happiness. It doesn't make you happy. And this is a psychological scientific fact. But we live, unfortunately, in a society that is run by multinational corporations whose objective is to get you to consume their products, and this includes, by the way, the drug cartels, right? And their whole objective is to get you to be a consumer, right?
Exactly.
Now these people know that that miserable people consume. You consume because you're not happy. You take drugs because you're not happy, right? You want to lose yourself in hours and hours of fantasy because fundamentally you're not happy. Unhappy people consume. Right? Whether it's the spiritual tradition of Buddhism or even Hinduism or Islam or Christianity, any spiritual tradition, you find the most spiritual people are people who do not care at all about worldly possessions. Right? They're leading extremely fulfilled lives, but they're not running after. And this is the same with, of course,
I would
our
like to pick on this word, fulfilled life.
Yes, fulfilled, yes.
Isn't that something that we should all be aspiring to?
We should. We should. And I think this is the thing, I want to go back to the main point, is that everyone needs to ask themselves, and this is what I said to, there is a girl, a girl in England, she's an English girl, converted to Islam, and she worked in the gym, the local gym where I used to go, and I used to go and work out in the gym, and she started asking me questions about Islam. So I started talking to her and explaining Islam to her, and alhamdulillah, after some time she was ready. She said, "You've answered all my questions. The only thing is I don't want to give up going out on Friday night and Saturday night and getting totally drunk, and I love it. Why do I want to give that up? I said, listen, let me ask you a question. When you come home Friday night, Saturday night, I'm talking about the next morning, do you wake up feeling I've improved myself as a human being?
Or do you wake up with a hangover?
Yeah, or do you wake up with a hangover? Exactly. And do you feel that you wake up feeling I've made the world a better place?
Exactly.
And she said no. I said, then you know what? You're not happy, are you? Really?
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Where is the answer? But, ladies and gentlemen, you will have to wait for their answer. We will be taking a short break. Don't run away.
Graduaki argumenta malumat lifa gotum via vara masakke terikamuge gotum faha kolle venashe
lobiwa anhenuna darin duko rashun beruga masakke kuran ulun Ibrahima fasih kamakan nuvi libe amdaniya vure Ibrahim iskuri ailage maslahatu ekamaku mi badala ekus enage masakkatakan huttumenne maleke padana zukumuniya
निहार में से कोरन अड्डी है फोटो के दिखा बरो
व्यागन का किया तो अड्डे हाथ फोटो के
नीति अलगोंडु गबुर पुरा गोतगा मीदि मेदनु कने मरावरा मसे कोरवणे कमवणी साध मस्तु को तेरेगा निम्मेने कम अलगोंडु गबुर को
एनेगे इस्तरी गंडु व्यागन कं एनेगे इस्कोला එබර ඉස්තර ගන්න ඕන අංගෙ බෙෆලෙමේ අද ආවුද මෙදෙනේ හතර ෆොටෝ හැංගින්චි ඉස්කොල ගොරි එනම ඉස්තර ගන්න එබොරි හතර ෆොටෝ හතර ඉන්චි
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for your patience. And quickly, we'll go to the answer that you've been waiting for. What did she say, and what's your answer?
Yeah, I mean, she said, of course she said no. I mean, there was no sense of accomplishment. There was no, all it is unabated hedonism. That's all it is. And what are these people seeking? They're seeking a moment of what Buddhists call nirvana. The actual term nirvana does not mean enlightenment. It means self-annihilation. Right? People are seeking a moment when they lose themselves, and they want to lose themselves because they're not comfortable with themselves. They don't feel comfortable with the way they are. So they get this moment of release of whether it's, they may be dancing all night until they get
And
lost in the
what
music.
a sad thing, running away from yourself.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. But they're running away because there's something fundamentally that they're unhappy with about themselves, right? This is the reality. And funnily enough, this is one of the reasons I actually stopped being a Buddhist, because I felt that Buddhism was fundamentally flawed from its beginning. The first premise of Buddhism was, I was a Buddhist for a bit, was the first noble truth of Buddha supposedly is that life is suffering, and the cause of suffering is the ego. And although there's a big truth in that, there's also something profoundly wrong, because the ego is not all evil, it's not all bad. You shouldn't annihilate yourself. What you need to do is be in balance with yourself, in tune with yourself. You need to find, the middle path. And this is what Islam is. Islam is that middle path. It's that sirat al-mustaqim. It's the balanced way, right? And that's what it's about. This is the thing, is that in Islam, when you follow Islam and you practice Islam, you feel comfortable with yourself, because you are now in tune with nature, you're in tune with your creator, you're in tune with your natural self. This is what Islam teaches us.
Young people, listen up. Young people, listen up. Here's a man you should be talking to.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, sir, for coming on board.
It's a pleasure.
This is one of the best times I've spent on this program so far. But here's the next one, which is even stranger. This one says, make money while you can, save for a rainy day. Your reaction to that one? This is one way to stay happy, apparently.
Make money while you can, and save for a rainy day. I mean, there is a big presumption there that you're going to live for a rainy day. I mean, I can't think of something that in many ways contradicts the ethos of a Muslim more, in the sense that, of course, the Quran does warn us, don't extend your hand so much that you leave yourself in poverty, and don't be so stingy, that you tie your hand to yourself. And yes, the Quran says the spendthrift is the brother of shaitan. So just wasting your money and spending it uselessly, right, but there is an ethos again. It's a world. It's not just Islam. I mean, there's certain things you'll find every religion, almost without exception, teaches it. And this is something I remember from Christianity, and it's the Prophet Muhammad said exactly the same thing. It's like, live like the birds. The birds go out in the morning, they look for their provision, God provides for them, and they come back, they're fed, they're clothed. So this idea that we have to sort of save up, that we have to hoard. I have lots of problems with that. I mean, for me, it creates a whole social phenomenon that is antithetical to Islam. We should have families. You should be able to expect, and I don't mean you have kids because they're your pension plan, right? But it's not about that. It's about, that's how we should love each other. We should expect our kids to be looking after us when we're old, just as we looked after us when we're young. And that's the sort of society we want to build. And you know what? If I can keep working till I'm 85, 95, I'm going to do it. But if I can't, I should expect my family to look after me. This is how it should be. I shouldn't need to think about saving up for my pension plan so I can, look after myself when I'm
Be
old.
like a bird. Go out there and God will provide for you.
Absolutely.
Trust Him that much.
Yes. But I'm not saying waste your money and spend it uselessly and live off credit like I hear a lot of people in the Maldives do. By the way.
Here's a nice one. Do not judge yourself by someone else's yardstick. If you're okay with who you are and what you are happy.
Yeah, there's something in that. I think that there is something in that, in the sense that being comfortable with yourself. I mean, a lot of the things that I learnt about being content and happy spiritually, I explored before I became a Muslim. Before I became a Muslim, I've already mentioned I was into Buddhism for several years. I studied, New Age religions, psychosomatic yoga, magic, I don't know, and philosophy. Whatever you can think about that might shed light on the human condition is something that I looked into. So this whole aspect of loving yourself, right? it's something again I learned. I learned that it's important to love yourself. You can't love others really if you don't love
the
yourself.
The Greeks have a word for it, the philotimo concept.
Yes, there you go. Exactly. Even this is existing in Greek philosophy. You know, so being I don't mean being narcissistic. You know, I'm not like Narcissus just staring at your image. You know, I'm so beautiful. Look at me. Who is that gorgeous reflection in the mirror, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Until you just waste away. No, it's not about being in love with yourself in a narcissistic way. It's about being happy with who you are, happy with what you are. You know, not being obsessed with body image or, you know, trying to, you know, be something you're not. And again, you know, this is something to reflect upon. It's, you know, someone looking from Islam from the outside may think, you Muslims are supposed to follow the example of your Prophet Muhammad, so basically you're all going to be a bunch of clones, right? All sort of little. So, but you know, when you look at when you look at the Sahaba, who followed the Prophet more than the Sahaba, yet you will find people, every one of them, with hugely different personalities.
Exactly.
The personality of Abu Bakr is so different from the personality of Umar, who was so different from the personality of Uthman, who was so different from the personality of Ali and Khalid and Abu Huraira and Abdullah. I mean, you look at them, and Aisha and Salama, and every one of them was a personality. It wasn't a religion. It wasn't a group of clones. They had their own personalities, right? So although yes, we look to these people as for inspiration, we look to them, to people that we want to aspire and emulate, yet they themselves still retained a core personality that made them very, very unique. And that's another sort of strange paradox. I haven't quite got to the bottom of it yet, but it's something I've observed, you know.
And here's another one I got which says, oh, this one's really nice. Always give back a little to the world. The world has been kind to you.
Yeah, you need to give back a lot to the world, I think, not just a little, you know. I think the more you, to a limit, but the more you give, the more happy you're going to be. No, you can give obsessively where you self-destruct. Some women can be like that. I don't mean it, you know, they do it out of, you know, some women can, many women can be like that. You know, they push themselves to the very edge because they're givers. They're naturally, you know, that's in their nature. You know, they're the ones who nurture the children, and women can give, and they almost don't know when to be a bit selfish, right? And that's a balance that it's important to find. You know, I'm always telling my wife, you know, I've learned the art of selfishness.
I should do this. Young ladies, listen up. Young ladies, this is for you.
Yeah,
Please.
you do need to, and husbands need to realize as well, by the way, your wives need a bit of time. They need time for themselves. It's not all about you and the kids. If you don't give them that time, you're going to suffer at the end of the day, because they're gonna close down, they're gonna shut down, right? So women, everybody actually needs a bit of time for themselves. But actually, I think, other than that, the more you give, the better. What comes to my mind is a something in the Quran. I don't know I can't remember the Arabic, but the English meaning is, they ask how much you should give, right? And then the answer that Allah gives is, whatever is beyond your needs. So keep what you need, after that give, right? So, I mean, it depends on your needs, right? But if your needs are few and they're met, then after that, and by the way, giving is not just money, it's time. You know, it's love, it's so many things. Yeah, exactly. So,
and here's the last one I'm going to ask you this evening, because we are running out of time.
What a shame, I'm just enjoying this.
Exactly, me too. This last one, I'm skipping a few in fact.
Okay.
And this one says, believe in something and be passionate about it.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. And another saying, another little, you know, proverb that everyone could, people who believe in nothing are in danger of believing everything.
I see.
Yeah, if you don't believe in something, you'll end up believing every piece of nonsense.
And being everybody's clown.
Yeah, and you'll be everybody's clown. So, and I would say for this, you know, believe in Islam passionately and be passionate about Islam. You know, don't be, unfortunately for many people, Islam is just a cultural phenomenon for them. It's not something they live. It's not something they taste and experience. It's just something we do it because our parents do it. And, you know, don't have that attitude, you know, be passionate.
And in one sentence,
Yeah.
one final message for the young people out there from Abdurrahim Green, the man.
Now you just, that's the hardest thing now you've asked me to do. Gosh, I mean, you know, be mindful of Allah, really, be mindful of Allah, because in that state of being mindful of Allah is where your heart will truly find rest.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one program where simply this 30-minute slot is just not enough. But then the clock ticks and I have to go away, and so does my guest. So until the next time, we will have to say bye-bye. Reluctantly, you and I know it is with reluctance, but we will have to do this. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.